This video shows how to install the floor pivot. Core drill a 3.5 inch diameter hole. The hole should be approximately 3.5 inches deep. Use a chisel to break out the core drilled concrete. Clean out the hole. To provide a level surface for the floor pivot, we are going to pour a thin layer of pour rock in the pivot hole. Make a mark in the pivot hole 2 1/8 inch from the top of the finished floor. Mix enough pour rock to fill the pivot hole to this mark. Fill the pivot hole to the 2 1/8 inch mark. Allow 15 to 30 minutes for the pour rock to dry. The top of the floor pivot must be 3/8 to 7/16 inch above the top of the finished floor. The center of the floor pivot must be exactly in the center of the door. And the top surface of the floor pivot must be level. To accomplish this, the floor pivot has 3 leveling screws. Adjust the leveling screws until the floor pivot is approximately 3/8 inch above the top of the floor. Now lay the 3/8 inch spacers on the floor on the door's center line. Then sit the torpedo level on top of the floor pivot. If necessary, adjust the leveling screws until the pivot just raises the level off the spacers. Line the level up with the center line. Then line the pivot up with the level. Turn the torpedo level 90 degrees and repeat the process. Line the level up with the center line. Then line the pivot up with the level. The floor pivot is now in the center of the door. Do not move the floor pivot from this point on. The top surface of the floor pivot must be level. If necessary, adjust the leveling screws Next, verify that the floor pivot is still centered. Using a straight edge, verify that the floor pivot is centered on the center line of the door. Also verify that the pivot is still centered with the line perpendicular to the center line. Next, check the distance between the center of the pivot and each wall post. These dimensions should all be the same. The next step is to fill around the pivot with pour rock. Place a small weight on top of the pivot to keep it from floating. Mix the pour rock. Then fill in around the pivot. Fill until almost flush with the top of the finished floor. Allow at least 30 minutes to dry.